Good morning, students. In the last three classes, we have learnt about different discoveries and we have learnt about the basic structural organization of cell, and we have learnt about the relation between the shape, size and the function of the cell, and we have learnt about the function of plasma membrane, and we started learning about cellular transport. In that we have learned the passive transport method, that is diffusion of gases, diffusion of water. Diffusion of water is called osmosis, and how osmosis takes place, from where to where water moves. All these things we have learnt. We have learnt about hypotonic, isotonic and hypertonic solutions. And we have learnt about the fate of the cell, in hypotonic, in hypertonic, in isotonic. In hypotonic, water moves into the cell, that means cell gain water, cell gains the water, so cell will swell. In hypertonic, water moves out, cell loses water. In isotonic, no net movement of water. These are the things we have learned, and we have taken two experiments also, one with de-shelled egg and another one with dried raisins or apricots. De-shelled egg, next dried raisins or apricots. When the de-shelled egg is kept in pure water, the egg will be swollen, and when the dried raisins or apricots are kept in pure water, they are getting swollen. And these things, when they are taken out and kept in salt water or concentrated solution, what is happening? They shrink. This shows the osmosis or movement of water from the region of its higher concentration to the region of its lower concentration through plasma membrane. These things we have learned. Let us learn about the other important things. We have learned there are unicellular organisms and multicellular organisms, and among unicellular organisms, some live in soil, some live in water, some live in fresh water, some live in marine water, etc. We take unicellular freshwater organisms. Unicellular fresh water organisms. and most of the plant cells. Most of the plant cells, unicellular freshwater organisms, and most of the plant cells. Both of these things, they gain water by osmosis. They gain water by osmosis. So that means what is happening to them? They are living in an environment, or the environment surrounding them is created in such a way that hypotonic environment is there, by which water is entering inside. So only these cells are gaining water. So root cells, plant root, they contain specialized hair-like structures called root hairs. Root hairs are unicellular structures. Unicellular structures. So these root hairs, they gain water. Root hairs gain water by osmosis. By osmosis. Root hairs gain water by osmosis. So absorption of water by plant roots, it is an example of osmosis. And we have already learnt that diffusion plays an important role in gaseous exchange. Okay, gaseous exchange. By diffusion. And water entry and exit also by means of diffusion only it is taking place. So water and gases, these two things, they are entering in or exiting from the cell by diffusion. Water and gases exchange is taking place by diffusion, and diffusion always takes place without the expenditure of energy, or it is passive transport method. Diffusion takes place always by means of what? Without spending energy, or in a passive transport way. So movement of the substances like gases and water is occurring by passive transport or without spending energy. And the main mode is diffusion, means movement of the substance from the region of its higher concentration to the region of its lower concentration. And there are some materials or some molecules, they move in and out of the cell with the expenditure of energy. Some molecules other than water and gases, molecules move in and out of the cell with the expenditure of energy. This is called active transport. Don't worry, this thing will not be asked in your question. It's in exams. Okay. And water and gases, they move. Water and gases, they move in and out of the cell. Out of the cell without the expenditure of energy. So here, it is the only difference between active and passive transport. There is another difference also. In active transport, the molecule moves against the concentration gradient. Against concentration gradient means from low to high concentration also molecules will move. Here in passive transport, molecules move along with the concentration gradient. Along with the concentration gradient. Along with the concentration gradient means high to low. High to low. From the region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration. Lower concentration. Against means from low to high. This is how molecules will move. So, in both ways, the transport of the substances takes place. Some molecules move in active transport method. Some molecules like water and gases move in passive transport methods. Okay. Whatever it may be, molecules are moving through the plasma membrane. How the plasma membrane is allowing some molecules to move across it, and what is the reason behind it? Plasma membrane is able to allow some molecules to move across it because plasma membrane is flexible membrane. Plasma membrane is flexible membrane, so only it is allowing. And from where does this flexibility come? Means how the plasma membrane is having this flexibility. It is a functional parameter. Being flexible is functional parameter. Function always is correlated with structure. So, plasma membrane is showing functional flexibility of allowing some molecules to move across it. This is because of its specialized structure of having more amount of lipids and proteins and very less amount of carbohydrates. Remember this point. Plasma membrane is having more amount of lipids and proteins in its structure and very less amount of carbohydrates. Because of having more amount of lipids and proteins in its structure, plasma membrane is flexible. Plasma membrane is flexible. But how can we understand that plasma membrane is having more amount of lipids and proteins in its structure? We have to see the structure of plasma membrane, ultrastructure of the plasma membrane. But whatever the microscopes that were there, that were used by Robert Hooke or Leeuw and Hawk, with that only the outer cellular structure can be seen, but the ultrastructure of organelles or the plasma membrane cannot be seen. I have already explained that in the year 1940, electron microscope was invented. With the invention of electron microscope usage could make us to discover the structure of the plasma membrane. Plasma membrane is semi-permeable. Plasma membrane is semi-permeable. because it is flexible, and it is flexible because more lipids and proteins are there in its structure. And what is less in its structure? Very less carbohydrates. Very less carbohydrates are there in its structure. Only plasma membrane is flexible. Okay. So the flexibility of the plasma membrane is allowing some molecules to move in and to move out. Is this the only parameter that the flexibility is providing to the plasma membrane? No. Plasma membrane's flexibility is enabling the cells. Plasma membrane's flexibility can enable the cells to eat some molecules or to engulf, to swallow some molecules from their outer environment. The flexibility enables the cells to engulf or to swallow the materials from their external environment. Engulf or swallow the materials. Engulf or swallow the materials from the external environment. From external environment. The process of engulfing or swallowing the materials from external environment by the cells is known as endocytosis. Okay. Amoeba, like unicellular organisms, they obtain their nutrition by the process of endocytosis. Now let us discuss the in-text questions. How do substances like CO2 and water move in and out of the cell? The CO2 and water-like substances move in and out of the cell based on their concentration. If the concentration is more inside the cell, then they move out of the cell. If the concentration is less inside the cell than the external environment, then they move inside the cells by the process of diffusion. And diffusion of water is called osmosis. Why is the plasma membrane called a selectively permeable membrane? Plasma membrane permits only some molecules to move across it. Plasma membrane permits only some molecules to move across it, and it prevents other materials to move across it in a selective manner. As it prevents some molecules to move across it in a selective manner, plasma membrane is called selectively permeable membrane. So we have learnt about complete functional details of a plasma membrane. Okay, regarding cell wall followed by nucleus, we will discuss in the next class. Thank you.